Hello everyone, it's Channin here for Heffy Doodle. I'm so excited to have you joining me today. In this video, we are going to create a really cute slider card using the Wanna Build a Snowman stamp set. This is the adorable Wanna Build a Snowman stamp set. We're going to use these really cute penguins and Christmas tree from that set. We're also going to use this really versatile, super handy First Snow Stencil. That's going to help us create these wonderful snow drifts. We're going to start with the stencil and an A2 panel of 110-pound white cardstock. I'm actually going to use a stencil to trace a line. This is just going to help me get the positioning right for my images. I'm basically going to stamp the trees and one of the penguins down onto this panel because I don't want a lot of dimension. I can't die cut them out because that's going to prevent my slider from moving freely, nice and smoothly. So after I've made those drifts, I'm now going to stamp the tree twice as well as one of the penguins in Memento Tuxedo black because I'm going to later color these with my Copics. So now that I've finished stamping my images, I'm actually going to fussy cut this layer out. I'm going to cut right along the tops of my snowdrifts and then fussy cut also around the very tip top of one of my trees that extends beyond the drifts. Now we're going to move on to creating the background. I have an A2 top folding card turned on its side here, and I'm going to ink blend a really beautiful kind of blue sky. First I'm going to trace the very top of that panel I just cut out. This is so I know where I need to kind of stop my ink blending or how far down I need to have my ink blending. I have two distress inks picked out. Mermaid Lagoon and Blueprint Sketch. I'm going to start with Mermaid Lagoon, which is a little bit lighter, and I'm going to start ink blending at the very top, creating a nice gradation with this blue. I did stop and erase that line after I kind of got the gist down where I need to stop ink blending. I just don't want to trap any of that lead underneath my ink, so I erased it real quick before it got too trapped or too covered by the ink. Now moving on to my darker shade, which is Blueprint Sketch. Just going to blend at the very top here. Again, trying to create a nice gradation. This is pretty easy to do, and you don't have to worry about being absolutely perfect because we're going to add some water splotches or water drops here in just a second. So I have a little piece of acetate over on the left here. I'm going to spray some water down onto that acetate. Then I've grabbed a paintbrush and get that paintbrush wet and then just tap it with my finger to release some of that water. This creates nice little tiny little drops of water, and that will kind of mimic snowfall, I think, a little bit better. So I'm just going all over here at the top with this. And once I get what I feel like enough of those little water drops on there, I'm going to grab my towel and just kind of pick up that water. And I'll hold it to the camera here so you can see it just creates a really soft, pretty kind of snowfall look. So now that I'm done ink blending, I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment. The sentiment is also from Wanna Build a Snowman stamp set. I'm going to ink it up here in Memento Tuxedo black just so my blacks are consistent, and then I'll stamp it right on my background. I gotta do this now before I get my layers on top because that dimension will make it a little tricky to stamp it, so we're going to stamp it first. Now I'm going to move on to some Copic coloring. I'm going to color one of my trees here. The Copic markers that I'm using are on screen so you can follow along. I have 3 greens picked out for the tree. I started with my lightest green, which was G14. Now I'm working on my medium shade, which is G7. I'm going to create a nice little gradation on these boughs. Once I finish with this medium shade, I'm going to move on to my darkest shade and color the very tips. This darkest shade is G28. And again, the colors that I'm using are on screen so you can follow along. Once I finish coloring the very tips of these boughs with this darkest color, I'm going to then blend it out and make it a really smooth transition by going back through my colors. So now I have my medium shade here. I'm blending that transition between the dark and the medium, and then I'll finish up with my lightest shade and blend out that transition between the medium and the light. Now that my tree's done, I'm going to color all the decorations on the tree, starting with the ornaments, doing a nice medium blue here, 2 blues, 1 darker just to add a little shadow, and then I blend it again with my lighter blue just to kind of create that illusion of roundness. For the garland, I'm keeping it really light blue here. Again, really simple palette because I want everything to be, I don't want it to be too busy with too many colors. I'm now moving on to my penguin here. I did color my second tree off camera. I colored it exactly the same way I colored the first. So the penguin, I have 3 markers picked out just so I can get a really nice gradation for the black part of the penguin. I'm going to use a really light blue for his tummy just to create a shadow, and then I'm going to use those 2 light blues that I used before on the tree to do some of the stripes on his scarf. Then I have a couple of yellows for his beak and his feet, and then my darker blues or my medium blue combo for the other stripes on his little scarf. And I'm going to color the other little penguin off camera, and again I use the exact same colors for this little guy as well. And then I went ahead and die cut him out with the matching die. I'm now going to create my channel. This is where my penguin is going to slide in, and I'm going to use the First Snow Stencil again here. I want this channel to match the slope from a snowdrift, and obviously the stencil is going to help me create the exact same slope here. So I just traced the line here, and then I slid my stencil down a little bit, just 1/4 of an inch, and traced it again. And you see I have these 2 parallel lines. I'm now going to cut along these lines, and this is going to create the opening. So I just have an X-Acto knife here, and I'm just cutting on a cutting mat. And once I finish cutting it out, I'll then cut the little edge here, and that's going to just release that little section right in there, and now I have my channel done. So I went ahead and erased the remaining pencil lines for my slopes, and now I'm going to do some ink blending. But before I'm going to do any ink blending, I am going to protect my my penguin and my rightmost tree here with a mask that I created just by stamping the images onto a post-it note and then fussy cutting it out. I've got the First Snow Stencil here again. I'm going to line it up with that kind of arch on that first slope, and then do a little ink blending right along the edge of the stencil to create my first slope. And then I also blend a little bit at the very top of that slope. Now I'm blending on the second slope here, again just blending right at the very top of the paper, and that creates a little bit of gradation there, a little bit of shading, and really creates the illusion of depth. And here you can see, when I hold it to the camera, you can kind of see it a little bit better, that little bit of depth that blending creates. So now we're ready to put this card together. I have my front panel here. Before I can stick it down onto my card, I do need to add some foam tape to the back side of it. You need some dimension here so that your penny or your weight can move freely between the 2 layers. So I have some foam rectangles here that I'm going to place down. I am going to avoid placing any of this foam tape around the channel. You want to leave a good, I leave about an inch area open around the channel so my penny doesn't get caught on any of that foam tape and doesn't move freely. I went ahead and removed the backing on all my foam tape rectangles, and now I'm going to stick the panel down. I did pop my penny in there real quick before I stuck it down. I'm going to grab that penny with my scissors and just center it here in my channel. I'm now going to cut a small rectangle of foam tape here and stick it onto that penny. That foam tape is going to be what we attach our penguin to, but it also is what keeps this penny kind of within the channel and sliding along that channel edge. I'm just going to check it here after I got that foam tape down and see how my sliding motion is going. It seems to be getting caught a little bit, and I think it's getting caught up the upper left corner here. I didn't add a lot of foam tape up there, so I think that top edge is kind of drooping down a little bit and causing that penny to stick. So I just added a small amount of foam tape, still making sure that it was clear of the penny, and just kind of adhered it to the very tip top of that panel, and that provided a little bit more height and made sure that that penny was moving freely. Now that I've got that sliding motion going really smoothly, I'm going to remove the backing on that foam tape, and then I'm going to stick down my cute little penguin. And I do like having my penny all the way down at the end of my slider. That way I can make sure that when my penguin is all the way at the end, he's not kind of hanging off of the card. So that's a good way to kind of make sure he's still all within the dimensions of the card. I decided also I needed a little bit of shadow underneath these trees. They looked a little bit like they were kind of floating around here. So I grabbed BG10, my lightest blue I'd been using, and then blended it out a little bit with 0 just to kind of blend and add a little shadow under those trees so it didn't look like they were floating around. And once I finish that shadow, this card is all done. I'll hold it to the camera here so you can get a good look at all the details and see that sliding motion in action. It slides really beautifully, and I think that this cute little image of a penguin isn't couldn't be more perfect for sliding down a little snow drift. Just adorable. I hope you guys enjoyed today's card and video. Thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful day.